Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to do a little contrasting version of this piece here, done last week on vinyl. I mean, not vinyl, but holographic cardstock. Very dynamic, very, I don't know, kind of modern looking in terms of the overall surface patterning to it. This one is going to look antiqued because it is on a piece of vintage paper, pre-printed paper, okay? All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to do a little section of that scene. And we'll start off with our boulders with lichen. I'm going to do it. Now, this is just on a quarter-page piece of paper, so very small in comparison to a full-size, piece from last week. All right, boulders with lichen small right down there. Probably stamped out about half of it. And this is the Autumn Brook. I'm stamping it out in, or with the Brilliance Black. You can use whatever black you want. If you go with a little bit of a thinner black, it might stamp out lighter looking, but that's fine. It'll just, this is supposed to look aged and vintage anyway, so if you have images that are a little bit lighter, I mean, this one's a little bit lighter too. It'll kind of go along with the spirit of the piece. Okay, so I stamped this a little bit low because I want to get this quote stamp in here. Same one that I did the previous example here. Reason and faith. All right, let's see. I'm going to stamp it a little bit lower so I can get some overhanging tree limbs in here as well, okay? Just stamp it as straight as you can. I'm always a little bit off, with it. If you have a stamp positioner, you can do it. Utilize that to get a little bit of a straighter, I don't know, whatever, registration. Leaves. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of working around my words right here, okay? Just do it as best you can. Okay, something like that. A little bit of an overhang. And then, I use the leafless pines on the other one. I'm going to show you something right here. This is, I'm going to fill in here a little bit. See this open space right here? I mean, you can leave it, but I'm going to go in here, overlap slightly, get some of this other side, which is right here, and stamp it over here just to fill out that area like so, okay? And how about some of the reeds right here? About 3 impressions over here, and watch what I do with this. See this right here? I stamp like that. Now I inked it up again. I'm changing the angle slightly. And I went like this, here, and then lower. But I re-inked in between impressions, okay? So you can get this nice full and varied. You don't want to just go here, here, and here, or something like that, like a picket fence. So I like to go like here, here, and here. First, different angle, and then lower, like that, okay? So it looks kind of, yeah, relatively natural. I usually leave a little space in here, and that what you do is, if you're doing foreground elements like that, and you leave a little bit of space, it creates an entryway, or an opening, for the viewer to kind of enter the scene from. Now, if you have like wildlife or something like that in the background, and you want it to appear like, you're kind of obscured from view, you can do something like that. I don't know, it gives you a little bit of cover, so you don't scare the animal away. It's kind of an emotional type of barrier or something like that. It's like because when you're doing scenes, you kind of enter them from a kind of a subconscious or standpoint. All right, little solo canoeist. I was just using this earlier. But in the woods, we return to reason and faith. So it kind of puts us in that canoe, I believe. Or, I mean, or we could be the viewer looking out there. But a lot of times when you put a little character in something, from an emotional or, again, subconscious standpoint, it puts us into that position right there. Okay, so this makes for a pretty nice looking piece just as it stands. But I think I want to see if we can utilize some of these other types of elements in here that I've been using as far as media goes, okay? Now, there's not a whole lot I need to do in here from a shading perspective, but I think I am going to add a little bit of shading to this, just to add a little bit of extra color. So I have a couple of different brown tones. Let me see, I used this one last time. Maybe I'll use both of these, but just add a little bit of color into these rocks. So see how these rocks are a little bit darker down here and lighter up here? I'm just going to reiterate that in a very light way. Okay, I'm not using the full force of this pencil. And I'm just adding this down slightly like this to give this a little bit of extra shade and thus lighting. If you darken a certain area of the rock, then the other areas are going to look lighter by contrast, okay? And again, I don't want to make this too, super bold or anything like this. And I do want, this is going to look more like I don't know if it's going to look like a sepia print, but it'll have the spirit of it, just these warm brown tones in here to go along the spirit of the existing paper, okay? So down here in the grassy area, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going over areas that are already a little bit darker, okay? The water's edge, maybe. So I just want to see if some of my other techniques, like the paint pens, will work in here. I did try it on my first piece today, and I thought it looked okay, but I thought, let's try this autumn types of imagery in here and see if we can give it a little bit of shimmer. Because I do like that look a lot when it comes to deciduous trees. All right, so I think this brown pencil kind of technique on this paper looks really good. It's fairly subtle. See, I'm kind of darkening out the areas on the perimeter of this paper. And when I do that, when I darken this area on the perimeter just a little bit, let's say if it's darkening the edge by like 5%, okay? It's not only a 5% change, because now by contrast, if this is darker by 5%, then this seems 5% lighter because you're playing contrasts against one another. So I don't know if it's like a 10% change in terms of kind of the illusion of light, but it's somewhere in between, that 5 and 10, I would say. So like that, I just made that a little bit darker right there. And again, by contrast, that seems a little bit lighter. So what that does is it brings a little bit more of a focus to the canoeist as the subject of the scene. I don't know if it's the subject of the scene, but it's definitely kind of one of the visual landing points right here. The word stamp too kind of stands out a little bit as well. Okay, so that was one brown. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know if I really need to use this other brown in here in that one, because I'm using it fairly lightly. It's probably all I need to do. I guess you could bring in some other colors into here as well. I'm just doing it in a very minimal way. This is a 3mm pen. I'm gonna maybe not use that one. Here's a tan 0.7mm, okay, and Let's see if we can bring a little bit of highlighting into some of these trees. So this is a monochromatic, kind of a warm tone monochromatic scene right here. This tan is related to the brown tones of the paper, the aged looking, the vintage, paper look. The matte, uncoated nature of the paper as well kind of has its own characteristic. I think I took in some ink into my tip here. I need to get that flowing again. I always have a piece of dark matte cardstock next to me to just scribble out my paint to get it flowing again nicely. You need paper with a little bit of tooth to it to kind of scratch out the dried whatever media that gets into the small tip here. Let's see, doing that. Let's go up into these trees. There's some kind of more evergreen types of trees in the to contrast against the autumn deciduous trees. Putting some light onto the lighter portions of the trees within the design. I work really hard when I'm doing these designs to kind of balance out kind of what they call kind of positive and negative shapes within the designs to give them real good kind of balance and visual flow. All right, I think that's looking pretty good. A little bit of the water's edge. And again, that's on the design itself, so I'm just kind of looking for the lighter areas on the design. You can see how that shoreline right there is nice and light, and you can see these areas on my trees that are lighter, so I've gone in there and I've kind of reiterated it a little bit. So I think that's working pretty good. Yeah, I did try it earlier today, but I did it really minimally. So, yeah, just going with a little bit more here, and I think this paper can take it. I think the white may be a little bit too white for this type of paper. I mean, if white was all I'd have, I would use it. Okay, and I did use it for many years. Not on vintage paper. I haven't really worked with the vintage paper before, but white paint and pen work. I mean, there weren't all these different colors available, ranges of values in big sets, inexpensive sets at that. But they just weren't available back when, so we just have to use whatever we had. But anyways, I think that looks pretty good, and I don't know. I think that's all that really needs to be done. Let's put a little bit of sparkly light on the water in a couple areas. Oh, here's this tree glistening right here. I'll put it in those reflections in the water, a little bit of that light like that. So that is reflected down here just a touch. All right. pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to format this the same way that I did this one. I think that'll make a pretty good card. Yeah, I really like that look. So, colored pencil and a little bit of a acrylic paint pen. I should use a little bit of acrylic paint pen in this now that I know that it works. All right, so I'll pause this and we'll take a look and see what this card looks like. All right, we have this formatted here. I really like this gold around on the perimeter of this vintage paper. I mean, it contrasts against it, but it really harmonizes with it well with that, you know, the warm and changing type of surface like that. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it. I wouldn't call that gold foil antiqued, but I don't know. I think it harmonizes with it pretty good. All right. So, anyways, I'm looking at this piece myself here, but I really like the look of this whole kind of piece here, utilizing the beige paint pen in conjunction with it. It really needed that paint pen though, didn't it? It needed that top end light. Usually the top end is going to be white for me. But in this case, I think that given that aged feel, something like this works a little bit better. I have this other pen too that's kind of similar to it. This one right here, it's a little bit more orangish, but I think this one worked really well. And to contrast this against the white again, I showed this in another video, but you can see just, you know, how much lighter the white would have been. And again, I think the white would work out okay, but I just think that this one works out a little bit better. If you like to add in things like details and things like that into your pieces, I'd really recommend, you know, the Artistros set of these pens because it comes with a lot of different values of every given hue. So, anyways, contrast that against, and here's all these different types of colors in this one right here. So we have one area right here that looks very different in terms of the color schemes. And right here, in terms of the more aged look, here, I'll put that right up next to one another, at least on that section right there. So, several sessions to do this one on the cardstock, but this one right here, it's looking at, well, you know, a 15-minute card. Sometimes you don't have time for, you know, I mean, that was a big 8.5 by 11 piece. I'll have to do a smaller piece sometimes, but I don't know. I really like this and the simplicity and I don't know, just the I don't know. I guess that's it. The simplicity of it, and it has a different kind of visual tone to it. It's just quieter and I don't know, maybe more tranquil or something like that. The other one is more like alive with value changes and changing light and everything like that. But this one's pretty good like that. Okay, so speaking of that, so I hadn't really thought about it, but this gold on here, I think, you know, is a different type of beast next to this flat, you know, aged looking paper like that. So maybe this looks even more so in terms of the qualities of it, whatever it's supposed to be depicting, by having this kind of more dynamic, very reflective surface around there. So sometimes you can like play contrasts against one another in your matting or card formatting like that too. So I don't know, pretty interesting to me. I'll have to try some different colors. A lot of times I don't know, different colors don't really occur to me, so, but when I hold it up next to it, it's like, oh, that works pretty good, but not because it harmonizes so much, but because it contrasts against it. So you're kind of playing, I don't know, complementary types of sometimes colors and sometimes kind of surface textures against one another, I guess. Okay, so thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the card, and I don't know if you have any of this type of paper I'd recommend giving it a try and trying some of these simple techniques. Colored pencil and paint pen work. And like I said, if you don't have the different colored paint pens, just use white and take a look and see what it looks like. All right, thanks again.